Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Hope everyone is doing okay today. Let me check my volume. I was thinking about using this one as a 420 because I think the topic is interesting. And I don't have an answer to the topic, and maybe a mind expansion would do it, but I'm going to do this one without it being a 420. However, if you feel you want to blaze one, if you got one, and it is Friday and you don't have shit to do, God bless. God bless. I have an interesting topic today that I don't have an answer to, so I'm going to bring it up. What is TYT? What is the Young Turks? I'm asking this question honestly. I'm not being a dick asking it. I honestly want to know. If you remember, when I first started my channel, and I know I'm saying, would you remember, as if all of these people were here when I started my channel. I was at like 0. But when I first started my channel, I got into this kind of spat with, it wasn't a spat directly, more so I took a disposition against what Justice Democrats was doing. Progressive Voice was on the other side of that. I think it was maybe a few others, but it was like a group of us who was essentially talking about that particular topic when Justice Democrats came out. Cal flipped out that people were challenging him on this, and he lost his shit. My point was, just like my point is then, and I guess I've gotten so accustomed to how they operate that I really stopped thinking about this. But it needs to be brought up again. What the hell is TYT? My biggest gripe, or my main point, was you're fusing a media organization to a political organization. Political organizations are literally awash in lies. These things are essentially deplorable houses. And you're merging those two things together, meaning the media organization itself is supposed to have some level of objectivity, even though I accept that objectivity doesn't necessarily fully exist. Everybody has a point of view, everybody has a disposition, and whatever the bias is, it's just us as human beings. We're always using a lens to look at whatever we want to look at. Even if you switch to another lens, you're still using a lens. So as long as I understand your bias, there's no issue here because I understand that everybody is biased. What I am looking for, however, is some level of impartiality, and at the very least, the good faith belief that the information being relayed to me is done so without so much of a bias that it may potentially contort the story. Or at the very least, the person who's giving me the story doesn't have such a dog in the hunt that I have to actually wonder whether or not the story I'm getting is the actual story. You're merging these two things. I accept that the attempt is good, fair enough, but my fear back then was, how can you trust it? How can you trust it? Like, how can I trust what comes out from the media standpoint when you've merged it with some kind of political actor, meaning you have a dog in the hunt? Now, yes, as a lefty, you're going to have certain dogs in the hunt, but you could have multiple progressive candidates that are in a particular race. Like, it's not... All I'm saying is my biggest gripe with this was you're merging a political body with a media body, and you need to pick a pony because you're building in corruption into the process. One of the biggest gripes that we used to have with mainstream media was something like an MSNBC completely ignoring Bernie Sanders while pushing Hillary Clinton. Fox News backs their candidate, and none of us like all that very much. Meaning we hate it when they chose a side in that race, when they put all of their weight behind Hillary Clinton and only was forced and shamed into covering Bernie Sanders. We didn't particularly like that. But the new media is going to somehow build something that's supposed to be different and better using the same tools or the grossest aspect of the same tools that were used prior in our current media system. I'm going to revive that question again. TYT, what is TYT? Look at this. This is Naomi Kantz. Still extremely attractive. I'm sure standing out there for a very good cause. But is she a reporter or is she a political actor? Meaning, what are you doing? Like, I understand that reporters have a certain perspective and disposition, but this is not the first time that she's working purely as a political context. I mean, people gave money into this enterprise. I mean, paying for reporters. Is she a reporter or is she a political asset? When I saw this, one of the things I immediately thought back to was this. Do you remember that hit piece that was on Jordan? The woman who wrote this hit piece, I don't think is wrapped all that too tight. I interacted with her on Twitter. I think she's insane, but nevertheless, I'm pretty sure she's sane to somebody. So, fair enough. There was one part in this, though, that at the time where I read this, I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. And this kind of goes to my point of saying you're fusing a political body with a media body. This line. My interest was piqued, but I tried to ignore their conversation. My son had ear infections in each of his ears, so my concerns weren't on them at the moment. That's when I heard Jordan and tell Ty, what's Nomi doing is unethical. You cannot write speeches for politicians and then report on it. You can't write speeches for politicians, then report on it. Are you a reporter or are you a political actor? Once again, do you remember this? Right here.
Okay. This smells. This doesn't just smell to the public right now that the budget of the party was never put before. Forget about the budgetary committee for a second. Put before the people who have a fiduciary responsibility, whether it's Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, whether it's Donna Brazile when she was chair, when she was vice chair, or Vice Chair Ray Buckley, or Dr. Jim Zogby over here. That's over half the executive committee right there. Had no idea where the money was going. We spent $1 billion. Lost the easiest presidential race you could possibly imagine with joint fundraising agreements. State parties weren't being funded. During the DNC chair's race, there were some state party chairs who said, I'm an acting executive director and I have $3,000 cash on hand. How are you supposed to rebuild the party if you have no idea where that money was spent? And you know what? I did go through FEC filings, and it doesn't look good. It smells.
Again, don't necessarily disagree with what she's saying, but is she a reporter or is she a political actor? I mean, please tell me that I'm not the only one that sees a problem with the way this is kind of fused and emerged. I understand that TYT wants to get more ingratiated with the Democratic Party, and they're trying to create their own, we could say, political edifice of sorts. And as media or new media starts taking more and more of the lion's share of the market for old media, this becomes an edifice unto itself. Meaning in the same way you have these other networks, you have something like TYT becoming somewhat of a network. And yeah, I think these questions need to be hashed out now, because ultimately you're talking about something similar to state-run media, where they have their candidates, they have their disposition, and they just get out there and espouse those particular candidates and those particular dispositions. Now, she flips back to Tom Perez. Right here. As a reporter now. Not a political.
This is where I've worked, reflects the diversity of the community. That's part of culture change. And we've hired the best and the brightest where I've been, and they've been really diverse. And so we will do that. We will do that at the DNC as well. So, I've never been afraid to make tough choices in all the jobs I've had, and if I have
Quick question.
Getting elected, I will do that.
One last question. This is about unity, right? Who out of the Bernie Sanders world of the surrogates is supporting you?
I'm sorry?
Bernie Sanders. Do you have any notable Bernie Sanders supporters?
We have Matt.
He was a staffer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think you're asking the wrong questions.
Well, I mean, but if we're talking about unity.
Tom Perez says, I think you're asking the wrong questions. I don't like the questions you're asking me. You should be asking me better questions so I could be more flattering to this audience. I don't disagree with the question. I love the fact that she hit him in the knees. But you can imagine that now that I'm looking at this, I have to say to myself, is she hitting him in the knees because this is right and she's hitting him in the knees, or she's doing so because they have a dog in the hunt? And if they make Tom Perez look bad, Tom Perez is not the dog that they themselves have in the hunt. They want to make him look bad. Is she hitting him in the knees to make him look bad, or is she hitting him in the knees? Meaning, if this was her person, would she hit that person in the knees in the same way? You have to ask the question, because they have political actors and political dogs in a hunt, and she's flipping between this thing of a political actor versus a reporter. Let's flip to this part, just so a juxtaposition. Allison Hartson. Tonight and every night through June 5th, CA primary, I'll be on the Young Turks Rebel headquarters to talk to Cenk Uygur about why I'm the only candidate in the United States Senate race with the skill and experience to cure the country of the disease that is government corruption. She is going to be on the show every Tuesday, the June to 5th. They are pushing one specific candidate over the top. Vote for this person, vote for this person, vote for this person. This is beyond the pale for any media organization. As bad as MSNBC and Fox News is, I have never once seen them hold what is effectively a vote for this person and give this person money session every Tuesday. Imagine for the moment that this wasn't, imagine for the moment this is TYT, but imagine for the moment you have multiple people who are running in a primary race, multiple lefties, not just one or two. Let's say you have three. TYT chooses this particular person. In the same way that Bernie Sanders felt like he was being excluded from MSNBC or from mainstream media, wouldn't that lefty also feel like they were being excluded from the process in the way that these guys have chosen a particular person and is just pushing that person over and over down your throat? Not just that. Asking for money on her behalf and sending letterhead and everything else to try to get people to vote for her, meaning they're sending these fundraising letters on her behalf. Does she have to file the FEC rulings for the amount of media and attention that she's getting, I guess, free from the Young Turks in this regard as they try to get her in office? It seems like Uygur has made the decision that he wants to have some kind of political clout, and his way of getting political clout is trying to get it in by getting somebody in that seat, even if they have to turn their, what I thought was a media organization, into just this kind of political operation. Look at us.
California, which is your deadline to register to vote, is May 21st. So you got to get out there and register. And Allison Hartson's campaign is doing a thunderclap on May 20th at noon. That's when everybody works together to drive home a message online. And this is a very positive message to get out there and register to vote. If you don't vote on June 5th, your vote in November won't matter because you might be stuck with the lesser of two evils. So don't fall for that. Participate in this, AllisonHartson.com/thunderclap. Get involved. She's running against Dianne Feinstein for the Senate seat. Dianne Feinstein is one of the most conservative Democrats in the country, is for the death penalty, voted for every kind of tax cut, including the Bush tax cuts for herself. Got tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in tax cuts from that.
This is effectively a commercial to his audience to vote for and give money to this specific candidate. Look, I've said before that Donald Trump being in office as president of the United States is an honest portrayal of what America looks like to the rest of the world. In the same way that Gina Haspel being head of the CIA is an honest portrayal of what the CIA is and what it represents. You can kind of make the same thing here, that what they're doing here is taking the worst qualities of media and using this as its main quality. Meaning the worst qualities of media is bias. It's this thing of being in the tank for a particular person, and every story is looked at through the lens of that particular person. This thing of being partial to a particular party, a particular person in a race, or a particular party in a race. But they jumped the shark with this. Whereas everybody knows that MSNBC is in a tank for Democrats and Fox News is in a tank for Republicans. They don't do it in this kind of implicit way. They're just being overt and over the top in the way they're pushing their specific candidates. This just seems a little weird to me. And he's doing a commercial for the woman. Look, all I'm saying is any level of objectivity, any level of impartiality is just being tossed out the window. We're done with that. We just want this woman to get elected. We need our audience to send money to her, as much money as they could possibly send. And we're going to try to get this woman as much exposure as we can possibly get this woman. Which brings us back to the question, what are you? Now, let me give this other point before I get to the last point. The reason why I make this point that you never know whether or not what they're doing is because of political bias or whether they're doing it just because, I guess, they feel the way to do it. And that there's a problem with this idea of political bias if you're representing a particular candidate. I know some people who are big Young Turks fans say, no, There are no bad incentives built into the way the system is built. And just because they're connected with a political person doesn't necessarily mean they're going to show some kind of bias in trying to get that person elected. I think that's nonsense. I think you wouldn't accept that story from Fox News out in the same way, it's like, what is it, Truth and News or something like that, whatever they used to call themselves. And I don't think you accept it from MSNBC. I think you would say these guys are in a tank for Democrats, and the story that they give is going to be slanted in a way in the direction of the Democrats themselves. Why would this be any different, especially when this grows? And how does Uygur or somebody else on the network deal with an interview with somebody else who they're bringing on their team, meaning somebody else who's fused with their network? Meaning if they got into power, it would be like state-run media. Their candidate, their horse, the person who they themselves are putting up to run, and they themselves are essentially helping their campaign. How would they ask questions? And how would they have this kind of impartial, tough interview with somebody who they themselves are pushing to represent? You saw how they went with Tom Perez. I love this video because this video is everything wrong with media. Especially when you get into this thing of dealing with people who you yourself like. But there's certain questions that need and scream to be asked. But they aren't asked because they're buddy and friends with the person who they're having a conversation with. Odie Bagutti, Cenk Uygur, and Elizabeth Warren.
The person most widely considered to be the most progressive senator is Bernie Sanders. Yeah. So a natural question is, why not back him during the 2016 primaries if you two are the closest aligned in policy?
So look, I think that our primary, I thought was a good thing. And I thought it was good that Bernie was out there, that Hillary was out there. They were giving two different visions. They were out there through all the states. I thought it put both energy on our side. I'll tell you something else I thought it did. It made me proud to be a Democrat. While the Republicans.
Elizabeth Warren is being magnificently disingenuous there. The face touch is one of those signals that gets across that the person is lying. As she touches her face and as she backs away, she's backing away from Cenk Uygur because what she's saying she doesn't necessarily believe. And now she's going to give nonsense. She's about to give nonsense. I think it was good, Cenk. I think it was good. If you think it was good, why all of a sudden did you change your demeanor, change your posture as you're dealing with this particular question? Let's keep going. I don't want to fully intrude on this. I want to let her make a point.
Republicans were doing their clown car thing, with who was going to be voted off the island, and then, of course, ended up with a reality star as their standard bearer. I was proud of what Democrats were out there talking about. I thought it was the right thing to do. And in the end, when it was time, I went out there and fought once it was resolved to try to get Hillary elected, and I would have done.
Just so we're clear, she didn't answer the question at all. Why didn't you support him? Well, I was proud of how our primaries went, and when it was time, I went out to support. Let's keep going. He's going to push back.
Done the same for Bernie, no doubt about it.
Do you get why some progressives are still mad about that? That Massachusetts was decided by 1.3 points, Iowa was decided by 0.3, that perhaps he could have helped him put him over the top, and then he would have won Iowa, New Hampshire, Massachusetts.
And there are people who see it the other way.
Yeah.
For me, I think about it this way. There is nothing the Republicans would love better than for us to stand around and shoot at each other over and relitigate what happened.
Just so we're clear, what she's saying right now is the talking point. That talking point has gone from Tom Perez to Elizabeth Warren to pretty much any other Democrat that you run across. All of them say almost literally the same thing with one or two change flares. But ultimately, hey, I don't want to relitigate the shit fuck fest that took place last year in the primaries. I just want to move on to the future. That's what I want to do. Yeah. We just want to move on. We don't want to talk about what took place. Let's let people go on, because she's not my point. Cenk Uygur is in this.
In 2016, I look at what's happening in Washington right now. I look at what Donald Trump wants to do on health care and the Republican majority in Congress wants to do. I look at this new budget they've put out. I look at what's happening right now in the connections with Russia. And I say, God, we got to get focused here. And we got to focus on what Donald Trump is going to do in the next 24 hours, the next week, the next month. That's where we need our energy.
I also understand that, but primaries are important, as you say. Sure. You really enjoy the fact that there was a strong primary and a discussion of ideas. Yeah. I'm going to skip the standard question about if you're going to run. You've got a book out.
I don't know what the hell just happened there. He starts off saying, yeah, but you can understand primaries are important, which makes you think he's about to say something to kind of highlight the fact that what she just said had nothing to do with anything that he asked. They diverted him with Russia. She literally pivoted to Russia and Trump and, Republicans and clown cars and all this other stuff. He starts off saying, yeah, but primaries are important, which I think he's going to say something like the question that screams to be asked. Yes, Elizabeth, I understand all that. That really doesn't necessarily answer my question. Look, let's get to the heart of the matter. People think that because of your affiliation with the Democratic Party, you didn't necessarily want to step on eggshells. So you assume that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and in your assumption that Hillary Clinton was going to win, you didn't want to be on the outs of the party. So instead of aligning yourself with the person who you're most closely in value supposedly resemble, you took the politically cowardice route and just sat on the sidelines. That's the question. However you want to word it, that's the question to ask. Because fact is, that's what all of the Sanders supporters believe to be true. My point in this is, the reason why I make this point about political bias is because if it was me asking that question, I don't necessarily think Elizabeth Warren is a bad person. I don't hate Elizabeth Warren, but you damn sure I would have asked that question. Cenk Uygur's sitting there because he's friends with Elizabeth Warren. Either that question doesn't come to him, or either he doesn't want to answer that question because he doesn't want to put her on the spot. I don't know which one it is, but I'm making a point that if you can't ask Elizabeth Warren questions like that, why on earth do you believe the network is going to ask people questions who they themselves are affiliated with? And by the way, just to put a button on it, a little bit later on, the same Elizabeth Warren that said she was proud of it said this.
We learned today from former Democratic National Committee Chairwoman Donna Brazile that the Clinton campaign, in her view, did rig the presidential nominating process by entering into an agreement to control day-to-day operations at the DNC. The Clinton campaign controlling the party's staffing, strategy, finances, communications, and that agreement was entered into in August 2015, a year before she defeated Senator Bernie Sanders. This must shock you.
Look, this is a real problem. But what we've got to do as Democrats now is we've got to hold this party accountable. When Tom Perez was first elected chair of the DNC, the very first conversation I had with him is to say, you have got to put together a Democratic Party in which everybody can have confidence that the party is working for Democrats rather than Democrats are working for the party. And he's being tested now. This is a test for Tom Perez. And either he's going to succeed by bringing Bernie Sanders and Bernie Sanders representatives into this process, and they're going to say it's fair, it works, we all believe it, or he's going to fail. And I very much hope he succeeds. I hope for Democrats everywhere. I hope for Bernie and for all of Bernie's supporters that he's going to succeed.
Very quickly, Senator, do you agree with the notion that it was rigged?
Yes.
She's sitting there having tea and crumpets with Cenk Uygur. And the fact is, none of the information that came out that Jake Tapper was talking about, you must be surprised. All of the information that came out in Donna Brazile's thing was information that people had came out in Counter-Strike, that came out in Politico. A lot of the information was already known. It was already known. You could see it with your own eyes. Jake Tapper just chose not to see it and not necessarily to bring this stuff up. It was obvious and apparent, and the stuff had been floating around for over a year. I mean, come on. But they're sitting with Cenk Uygur, and she said with Cenk Uygur, I was proud. I was proud, Cenk. I was proud I was proud of what took place in our primaries. I thought what took place in our primaries was fucking A-rating. Later on, do you think they rigged it? Yeah, they rigged it. They rigged it. It's amazing. That's amazing. Look, my basic point, and this is a long way to go to make a particular point. Pick a pony. Are you political operatives or are you a news network? At one point, I thought you guys were trying to be a news network. I thought you were coming out with stories. I thought you were trying to be this kind of impartial journalistic endeavor, etc. You certainly ask people for money, raise money in order to get journalists. Are these people journalists or are these people news networks? You need to make up your mind whether you guys are political operatives or whether you guys are trying to do the news. That's all I'm saying. Because I have to be honest, I don't know which. I look at Nomiki, she flips between one and the other. And then the point that I made before, that when you're fusing yourself to a political organization, and I still stand by the claim that TYT is MSNBC light. Ultimately, regardless of them rattling and shaking and being pissed and angry and everything else, they still say vote Hillary. Are they going to say vote Joe Manchin? I'm curious on how far this vote ex-Democrat marks the spot. How far this goes. Pick a pony. That's all I'm saying. And yeah, there is something to be, those stories that they're coming out with, where they're functioning in this kind of way, where you're supposed to believe that these guys are political actors while they're actively reviewing politics. Please tell me I am not the only one that sees a problem with a media organization that is pretending to be or getting into politics. It's just bizarre. That's all. This is just bizarre. Let's see. I have an audience, so let's see what the audience says. Let's see. And Hartson is a Justice Democrat, right? Total conflict of interest. Cenk should recuse himself. Dem exit and dem enter. TYT mouth progressive viewpoints while still pushing Russia bait. TYT isn't rebel headquarters. It's Cloud City. It's a trap. Get ready for Carbonite. Wesley Walker. I never did like Cenk. You know what's funny? I actually did like Cenk. Cenk was my favorite person there. When the Russia stuff came up, when the vote Hillary stuff came up, oh man, yeah, he lost me on that big time. Like, and even after the chemical attack, he said, it's curious timing on the bombing. It's curious timing on the bombing. Mind you, he's been screaming about this Trump and the Syria stuff and Trump and Russia and all this other stuff, but doesn't necessarily take the responsibility of his organization for screaming about some connection there that they haven't necessarily been able to establish that there was a connection there. And then as they attacked Syria and got us closer to the brink of war, he comes out saying it is curious timing on the bombing of the chemical strikes. It's like, no shit. It's one thing to claim that in a vacuum, but if Republicans currently control almost enough state legislatures to amend the Constitution without Democrats, and that is terrifying, Balthazar. That is terrifying. That is utterly terrifying. Bold like a leopard. Stop relitigating, Boris. When you lead with your lawsuits, when you lead as a professor, hashtag when you lead with your lawsuits, hashtag when you lead as professors. Lori Glenny, do you know they just launched a 24/7 channel on YouTube? I heard that. I did hear that. Everybody else is screaming about demonetization. Well, they don't have to worry about it. They're on the ends. You think as political actors, they'd act better. Why would they have to? They have, 4 million people as a captive audience that love their content. And in loving their content, they've been kind of slid into this kind of edifice of the Democratic Party. So they can be rebels, they can be pissed off, they can be angry, they can talk about Medicare for all and everything else. Metal meets the road, or rubber meets the road on what do you do if your candidate loses? Are you just Democrat forever? Like, I'm trying to understand this. Yeah, what are you, man? I think that's a fair question to ask. What are you? Perez took a job as, professor while he was in DNC chair. That's right, Balthazar. He did. He's a part-time DNC leader. Yeah, he did. He really did. Look, I have no gripes at all with TYT. I mean, they've never done anything to me. They haven't kicked my kid or anything like that. I don't have kids, so I don't have a kid to kick. I don't necessarily like their coverage, especially with the Russia stuff. I think they went off the rails magnificently. I think telling people to vote for Hillary Clinton was a mistake. Not only did Hillary Clinton lose, but they also lost credibility with the sense of all impartiality just kind of went out the window. They chucked it. I think what it is, they find themselves, they have a political opportunity to get involved into the political space. Right now, they've been on the outs for God knows how long, and they're trying to make this claim and this pitch for political power using these people and Justice Democrats as their proxy for political might within the Democratic Party. So yeah, they're going to do whatever they can to try to heave their candidates over the finish line. From our standpoint, the people who are looking at this, and you're looking at this and saying, what are you? And that's what I'm going to leave this question as, because I don't know the answer fully to this question. Are you political actors, meaning are you political operatives? Or are you trying to do the news and you're just doing it badly? Or are you some platypus of both? I don't know which. I leave it to the audience to make their choices. Let's see, who else is here? Garnome. Anyway, in essence, Cenk is no longer the real captain of the TYT ship, owing $20 million to political sharks and heavy chain around one's neck. He can be pulled any way Jeff K and his friends want. Now, here's the catch. And I've heard Jimmy Dore make this argument, and I understand that they're friends. Jimmy Dore and Cenk are friends. I strongly suspect if Jimmy Dore was sitting here in this spot looking at that, they would say, it looks like their content has changed magnificently into something that's more of an MSNBC-like. Whether that's because they want to make themselves more marketable from the standpoint of, we need to tone down and dumb down our content to some degree. And we need to focus on certain topics because those topics are more in line with the MSNBC-like type audience. Is that because of the $20 million or is that because of the way the YouTube guidelines that forces monetization? I don't know. I do know in any other context, if you're talking about somebody getting $20 million, you're talking about, a guard dome, a leash around somebody's neck, the cash being the tether of that sort. They act like this money doesn't matter. But this is antithetical to TYT. I don't understand how you make the argument. The whole argument for TYT, the modus operandi, is the problem with politics is corruption. These people are getting money shoved into their G-strings and told to go out there and dance. And so the politician is really this kind of meta-narrative between the society itself and plutocrats. They're doing the bidding of the people who are giving them money, but they need to dance and sing and everything else and come up with what would these plutocrats take and still give me money. Meaning if I say Medicare for all, I need to get across to them that Medicare for all is necessary. Otherwise, they're not going to give me money because they don't like Medicare for all. It's a meta-narrative between the society itself and plutocrats. The politician is the middleman between that narrative. That's TYT's thing. I mean, come on. I mean, the whole thing with corruption, that's their thing. These guys are bought, these guys are bribed, this is open bribery, Citizens United, etc., etc. But it doesn't apply to TYT? I mean, this is, I don't mean this to be a hit piece, so I don't want to come across that way. I'm just saying, as an honest broker, like if Jeff Katzenberg gave me $20 million, I would say this money is not going to matter. The $20 million in no way impeaches my credibility or changes anything that I say. B, I know I said this applied to everybody else on the political space, that all of these people are bought when they got money like this. But that doesn't apply to me, so please refer to the first rule. And see, I'm going to use this money to expand, etc., etc., etc. I mean, come on. Of course they're going to say that. You got to say that. The question becomes, is it true or not? And whether or not the $20 million has had any impact on the changes that were made to the organization. I don't know. But like you said, they do have a contract also with YouTube now. So, who knows? I am Sinclair. It doesn't matter if they're friends, Dore is not doing what is right, which makes him a hypocrite and basically a Democrat sheep herder. Oh, that's painful, man, because I like Dore. But I have a hard time arguing with that, Siler. The thing is, what would be doing what is right? Let's be honest. What's doing what's right in the situation? So, I don't think Dore should leave. Honestly, I don't. I love Dore on that perch. And maybe you can make a point that Dore will be Dore on any perch that he was at. Maybe. I don't necessarily see the point in fucking up a good thing. That being said, if it was us, meaning if it was me, would I automatically assume that my friend is functioning because of some kind of profit motive? Maybe not. But this is kind of one of those things where there's a certain amount of distance that needs to be brought into the situation. If you believe that Dore is somehow biased from his friend Uygur, they're friends. That may be true. That's probably true. That would be true for any human being. So I don't blame him for doing it. He's just a human being. He's functioning on natural incentives. By the same token, what does that mean for candidates who are fused with the organization? Well, they also have that same bias going both ways, meaning that particular political person being somewhat leaning in to the Young Turks' direction from the standpoint of policy and everything else. Some of that is going to be good. But does it also mean that the Young Turks has some kind of influence, or at the very least, I guess what I'm getting at is, if you're a media organization, my problem here is, I can't necessarily make a determination on what's right and wrong from the standpoint of those images, meaning Nomiki Kant's functioning as a reporter, or this other political figure essentially acting as some kind of political person as opposed to a political running in a race. Unless I know what TYT is. If they're a media organization, then there's a problem here. If they're just political operatives, then you can't say there's an issue here. They're just doing their political thing. They're trying to get their particular person in, and they're doing it by hook or by crook, using what they have at their disposal, what used to be, I guess you consider, ruins of a media organization in order to do it. It depends on what they are. Unless there's something else, something in between. And then the question goes to the audience on whether or not you're okay with this kind of partial arbiter that's fused in this way. Like, I guess what I'm saying is, if you think the issue with Dore, where Dore is not necessarily, can't see it clearly because Dore is so close to Uygur, what does it mean from the standpoint of TYT reviewing politics, especially from the standpoint of political races, when they themselves are covering a race that they have a candidate in that they've been putting on their airwaves? It's going to be there like every Tuesday going all the way out to June. I mean, shit, man, this is like advertisement. It's not Jink. It's Motherland agent Davzin Dea Jamal. This Motherland agent. That's funny. Yeah, man, I'm not trying to be a dick on this. I thought the question was interesting. The question came up. I had a conversation with my wife about it. I've become so desensitized to the way they operate, trying to raise money and everything else, and backing these candidates to this full-throated degree, that I kind of lost sight of my previous complaint on this. And I think that complaint is coming to fruition. You have one person who's literally, potentially, or at the very least it's been alleged, was writing speeches for candidates that they were covering. You have the same person who's functioning as a Democratic operative in the Unity Commission, who's out there giving speeches, and in other cases being a reporter, hitting Tom Perez in the knees, which I actually like. Again, it's not so much that I dislike the things in the moments. I'm asking this larger question on the organization itself. And do we really want to build a new media and a new lefty movement using the things that we absolutely hated in the old system? Because that's what I'm saying. Do we really want to build a new system in the ruins of the old system, using the same tools and using the same edifices as the old system? And I would even make the case the worst aspects of it. Whereas MSNBC and Fox News are these kind of implicit bias towards those things. They're outright. Imagine for the moment you're running in a race. And imagine that you're lefty. And imagine there are 4 people in a race. Nobody chooses anything, but TYT picks their candidate and they give full-throated attention to that particular candidate. What is the other candidates going to feel like? And the reason why I'm asking that question is because, that's something that's taking place now, where you have lefty candidates who are saying we're being squeezed out. Not necessarily the idea. I'm just saying from media, or the DCCC is making a choice on who it wants and is putting their thumb on the scale in order to put their candidate through. TYT is a private organization. They can support whoever they want at this point. I'm just making the point that it is very similar to what the DCCC is doing and what the DNC was doing, essentially choosing who they wanted to succeed into those offices. So I would ask the question again, what is TYT? And I will leave that as an open question. Sorry, defending her policies as if she had them. Defending her policies as if she had them. I think she had policies. I think she was going to say whatever she had to say to get into that race or to win. But yeah, it's a little weird. I mean, it's a little weird. It's just, I remember them being a news network. And maybe I'm stuck in the mud in the sense of maybe they're growing out of the news network thing and they're trying to get into something else, which is fine. But the criticisms from people like me saying, how can we trust what you're reporting, especially in the political arena, when you have a dog in the hunt? So I'll leave it at that. I mean, it's hard to tell what they are anymore. And by the way, I would get spam left and right. Justice Democrats, Cenk Uygur. Justice Democrats, Cenk Uygur. Give us money, give us money, give us money. And it was hard to make a delineation between what was the Justice Democrats email versus what was the TYT email. I mean, it's as if these things have started to just fuse with one another. So I understand that these things are supposed to be separate and distinct from one another. Sometimes it's hard to make that delineation. That's all I'm saying. Wesley Walker, never knew the old Cenk. I only heard TYT after they ran with Russiagate. Oh, I see. So I like Cenk during the Rebel headquarters stuff. Like when going from the time when Sanders got into that race, TYT pushed him extremely hard at one point. And it was like at that point where I got on board was like, oh wow, this is awesome. Because everybody else was freezing him out. But this kind of goes back to my point. In the same way that everybody else was freezing Sanders out, is there any similarities between potential other candidates who may have wanted somewhat of a platform that were being squeezed out by TYT, that were somewhat lefties, in the same way that the other media networks were squeezing Sanders out? I'm just making the point that if you're going to build a new media network, and it's going to be a lefty network, fair enough. Should there be some sign of impartiality? That's all. That's all. And by impartial, I don't mean not having a bias. Everybody has a bias. Of course you're going to have a bias. You're a lefty news network. But the pushing of the candidate seems so extreme to me. That seems extremely extreme. And it seems such an outlier. Like the other networks don't even do that. Like that's so beyond the pale. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. Look at this guy. This guy right here. I'm a supporter of everyone involved here, but something about this arrangement doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right at all. Yeah, it doesn't feel right because they've turned their entire media network into almost a political arm of this person's campaign. It is impossible to have an honest conversation about this woman's pros and cons coming from the TYT network. And fair enough. You can say the same thing about MSNBC talking about their candidates. But the key point is that's MSNBC talking about candidates. I'm talking about candidates, not full-throated pushing of one. But let me know what you think. Let me know if I'm wrong. Let's see. Lorms. Lorm, sorry, I missed it. Laura Glenny, that's crossing the line. Laura H. They cater to those who are little awake and want to stay in bed. Oh, that I love that. Who are little awake and want to stay in bed. Oh, I love that. It's like they're lefties, but they only but so much that they go. I love that. That's hilarious. Hello, jerk. Are you guys insinuating that TYT might be operatives for the Democrats? I'm shocked. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm saying that if you're going to come out and scream vote Hillary Clinton, it's very clear where your allegiances lie. That's what I'm saying. I've said MSNBC life for God knows how long. It's almost as if their job is to diffuse, how can I say this? Diffuse the anger and give them this feeling like there's a pathway to do something about it through the Democratic Party. Like the capacity to change the Democratic Party using an outlet to do so, like a TYT outlet to do so. So you can be mad, you can be angry, you can call them corrupt, you can call them crooks, you can say whatever you want, you can be pissed off, you can look at the WikiLeaks thing, you can say, oh, look at all this corruption, they should be looking at the documents, you can flip out, you can slam your desk, you can do all this stuff. You have your space to flip out. But at the end of that flipping out, you better get your ass to the polls and vote Hillary Clinton. This is kind of my point. It's like, I think they're Democratic sheepdogs. I think they're sheepdogs. Daryl Levy, TYT support cadre in Ohio. They think he's a progressive, just like Washington Post called cadre progressive. Over Kucinich, they voted for that guy over Kucinich. Oh, that sucks. Jeremy Chase, thank you very much, Jeremy Chase. I appreciate it. Write a comment, Jeremy. Write a comment. Shirley Vick, I believe that the establishment told Thom Hartmann to leave his show on RT. Shirley Vick, I don't think they told him anything. I think Thom Hartmann saw the writing on the wall, and Thom Hartmann is a Democrat. Like, imagine for the moment that it's you. Imagine you're a Democratic functionary. Do you remember when Donna Brazile came out saying they rigged the primaries? And do you remember what Keith Olbermann came out and said? Now, Keith Olbermann did say squat about the cheating. Sanders didn't care about it at all. He was a Democratic operative. What he came out and said, though, was she's just lost her career. Not, oh my God, they cheated Sanders. Not, holy shit, they were corrupt. Not, oh my God, the lefties were right. None of that. Jake Tapper's like, you're surprised by this, right? No! Nobody's surprised by this because we've been screaming about it for over a year. The fact that Keith Olbermann says she just lost her career shows the priorities of Democrats and Keith Olbermann, like Keith Olbermann. Meaning, this is a career for them. Thom Hartmann left the RT thing because there was political pressure on Thom Hartmann to do so. Nobody had to tell Thom Hartmann that. Thom Hartmann understood it. He's a Democrat through and through. Thom Hartmann had his, this conflicting allegiances between the Sanders thing and the Clinton thing because he was one of those people who used to have Sanders on his show. Now, and having Sanders on his show, Sanders was just there to have a conversation about this kind of, about corruption and politics and that type of stuff. And so he didn't necessarily want to throw him under the bus. By the same token, his allegiances were to the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. That's how he played it. I don't think nobody had to tell him to leave. I think the whole RT thing itself was just enough pressure on Thom Hartmann internally to leave. I could be wrong. I just don't think it was necessary. I think Thom Hartmann looked around and said, all of my friends are Democrats. Everybody that I know and I interact with are Democrats. And these Democrats are hating Russia. Do I really want to be on a network named Russia today? That's what I think. I could be wrong, but all of this is conjecture. What about Nina Turner's... where is it? What about Nina Turner's association with Real News Network? That's a good question. So, Real News Network is not necessarily out there pushing Nina Turner full-throatedly, nor are they out there asking for Nina Turner for money. Nobody's doing it at Real News Network. Real News Network, nobody is on that network out there giving speeches for political operatives or the Democratic Party. I mean, those are two fundamental different things. Real News Network tends to actually do real news. They might have commentary, they may have a disposition, but I would make the point that they do it right. Like, they're left-leaning, but they're left-leaning in a way that still tries to be somewhat honest and impartial in the way they go about their stories. I don't remember Nina Turner on Real News Network saying, vote me in office and give me money, and they're out there doing like telethons for Nina Turner. I don't remember that at all. My point is, politicians can go to shows to have conversation with the shows. That's not shocking at all. You may have a politician who has... every so often is a guest on the show. You may have people show up on Bill Maher's show every so often. They're not there asking for money. You may have somebody show up on some other show. Real News Network is not out there pushing Nina Turner. Nina Turner comes on a show every so often to have a conversation. And if I'm not mistaken, Nina Turner may have had a show on Real News Network. But again, this is not her being this kind of political agent. Nina Turner is a politician. Everybody knows Nina Turner is a politician. There's no dispute in that. Are those things the same? I don't think those things are the same. Yeah, I don't think those things are the same. Real News Network is not necessarily pushing a political candidate. So, let's see. Rob Illinois. Nomiki was and is fake, was balls deep in the DNC for 4 years. Well, Rob, right. That, and you're kind of hitting on the same thing. It's like, how on earth are you reporting on something when you are an operative for the thing that you're reporting on? Is that fair? I mean, I think that's what we're getting at. I am Siler, whisper of a dream. Great question for actual progressives, Zach Jamal. Actual progressive policies would never be implemented with TYC, DNC around. Man, that's a good... See, that's an interesting point, I am Siler. So, is that true, though? Like, I've said this before, and I think, and some people have disagreed with me. I actually think Cenk earnestly wants some level of political change. I think Cenk is a capitalist. I think he would try to maximize his property like any other capitalist. But I think he's a capitalist with this idea of a limit and that we've gone beyond certain limits. I think that's the way he looks at it. So from his standpoint, yes, he wants to bring things back in order, but he believes that in order to do it, you do it through the DNC. That's what I think. That's my appraisal. Which means I do think he wants to bring that stuff in alignment. In alignment with what he sees to be, I guess, an adequate level of capitalistic endeavors. But is it true that nothing gets implemented with a TYT around? I don't know, man. My feeling is that organization had the potential to be amazing. Like, I look at Real News Network. Somebody brought him up. That's actually a really good point. Real News Network is a fucking amazing network. Like, I've been watching them for the past few years. I've donated money to them. I think I was donating money to them like a year or more ago. I think that's one of the only things I've ever donated money to. No. They're not the only thing. That's one other thing. But my point is, they're really good. And they're really good in this way. Ern Matei eviscerated that guy with the Russia narrative stuff. Like, whereas TYT went whole hog into anti-Trump, they took a complete disposition into the Democratic Party. The candidates who they're pushing are Democrats. It seems that all roads still lead to the Democratic Party regardless of what they say. Is it true that nothing changes as long as... I don't know, man. I don't know. My feeling is they had the potential to be something fucking awesome. And somewhere along the way, they lost the mission. Nomiki was and is fake, was balls deep in the DNC for 4 years. Yeah, they do have a bias. This chat is absurd. Rails on all day against SJW causing division based on ID politics. Then sit here and argue who's progressive enough and why. Joshua Renshaw. I don't like this is progressive stuff. I mean, my question here has nothing to do with whether or not they're progressive. My question here has everything to do with what are they, whether they're a media organization or whether they're thing. The is progressive enough thing always weirds me out. I've said before that I think all of us are in the same sandbox. I do. I think there's a certain... I guess you can say measure. Yeah, I think there's a certain measure that for the most part, from outside standpoint, I think all of us are in the same sandbox. My question has nothing to do with their progressivism. My question has everything to do about whether or not they're a media organization or political organization. That's all. But by the way, I do think SJW caused division to some degree, but that's not fully just SJWs. Yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. It's not as simple as SJWs causing division. Democrats do play that up for political effect in order to create divisions, in order for their party and to get votes. But they do it in the same way that Republicans played on identity in order to get their votes. Meaning, Republican Party does go towards religious groups, you could say like Christian groups or these kind of evangelists. Essentially, any group that they can essentially get to vote for them that is not necessarily paying too much attention to the fact that they're only representing the top 1%. Democrats have started to do something similar with identity politics because they have issues with getting votes. They play off one another. It's not as simple as SJWs, or if you want to call it. The SJW thing even kind of weirds me out because it's so imprecise. If you were in the 60s, somebody called you a nigger, and somebody else said, oh, you're being SJW. I mean, let's be honest. These things are relative. At a certain point, I don't necessarily want to continuously have a conversation about rape. Well, you can say that that person is being somewhat of an SJW because they're saying, these type of conversations. All of these things to some degree are subjective, and all of these things to some degree work in ranges. There is no objective from the standpoint. There's some things where people will say, wow, that's beyond the pale. But most things are in between those ranges. The SJW thing all depends on the range that the person is speaking in. Some people go too far with it. Like it's always an imprecise conversation because it's not one or the other. It's a little bit of shading. That's all. Bob Ramirez. So when the boss says ship toxic baby formula, you ship toxic baby formula. That's Tom Hartman. Oh, Bob, that hurts. That's rough, Bob. Lawrence. Hartman has a narrative and no facts will knock him off of it. Hartman is fascinating to me. Like some of these people, it pains me, man. Hartman was part of my political awakening. He really was. Like, I look, here's the thing. There's some people who take on a democratic perspective from a cultural standpoint. I think Hartman is one of those people. I also think Hartman is one of those people that's been a Democrat for so long. And in being a Democrat for so long, he looks at the other party as being rabid and insane and not an option. And so he looks at the Democratic Party as his only choice. I've heard Hartman talk about some of the stuff that he wanted to see around the world. And the guy is a lefty. The problem is he's wrapped himself into the party mantra. I would make the same point about Cedar, and I would make the same point. No, I'm not going to say Jank, but I would definitely say Cal. These guys are lefties. Now, the catch becomes, how much have they identified themselves, their personality with the party itself? Like, I try to make a distinction between what the individual wants versus what the individual thinks they can accomplish. And in what they think they can accomplish, believing, many of them, that the only way to accomplish that goal is through the party apparatus itself. I would make the point that in order the way to accomplish that goal is to drain support from the party apparatus if they actually want the party apparatus to do what they want it to do. Like, I understand what you're saying, man. It's not... I understand what you're saying, Joshua. I guess... And I think you're right. It's always somewhat of a weird conversation. I never liked Seiler saying fake progressives. I hate that term. Like, I don't know what that means. I use the term when I'm talking about Kamala Harris, but that's somebody who's clearly not in my sandbox. Like, I don't like this description of other people in the sandbox as fake progressives. I agree with you, Josh. I don't like it. I never liked it. TYT screams Russia and vote Democrat so loud it gives Rachel Maddow wet dreams. Jeremy Chase. Politicians should beg to get on media, not the reverse. Balthazar. Right there, man. Right there. We have this weird stenographer culture where in order to get access, you toe a particular line. If you want to talk to Hillary Clinton, well, what line are you going to toe in order to get that conversation with Hillary Clinton? Or you're cut off. Think of all the military brass, and you get these anonymous messages and everything else. If you want access, you're going to have to toe a particular line. I think your point is it should be them trying to get on the air, not the other way around, where in order to get that access, they have to essentially either not go certain places or be light on them. It's funny, Balthazar. I always ask this question of whether they're incompetent or whether they're corrupt. And sometimes I honestly just don't know. When Cenk is having that conversation with Elizabeth Warren, did he not ask her that question consciously, or did he not ask her that question because they're buddy-buddy? Which one is it? And if there's other associations between TYT and people who are running in those races, are we going to find the same thing? Certain questions are not asked, certain things are ignored, certain perspectives are not even comes up because these guys are buddy-buddy, these guys are friends, and these are in with the network that is reporting and reviewing them. I don't know. I look at what took place with Elizabeth Warren, and I think that interview was a travesty. The very question that was screaming to be asked was, why do you believe that this was a good election? Why? With all the controversy, with all the people being pissed off, with all the Sanders supporters that left, you had 15 million people leave the Democratic Party. What did you see, Elizabeth Warren, that those 15 million people others didn't? Like, these questions scream to be asked. And he literally pivoted to something else when she brought up Russia. Just saying. That was not a good interview. And if that's what we have coming, I'm just saying. Shwari Kate, what's happening, Shwari? During the DNC convention in Nevada, I noticed Hartman's relationship to the DNC and the HRC shifted. He trapped himself into his own spin on what happened in Nevada and with the Bernie bros. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Dara Levy Shank likes to employ cheap, young, naive, so-called journalists who fall in line with TYT groupthink. Now, Miki Khan says, well, I'm not going to say anything about her age. I mean, but she's not. She's been in reporting for a while. I mean, this is not her first gig. Emma Vigeland, yes, that's fair. What's the other cat? Sean King. I don't even know if he still works there, but Sean King's been doing this for a while. Matt Tracy. I actually like Tracy. Tracy annoyed me with his interview with Peter Joseph, but all in all, I actually like Tracy. He pushed back on that Russia narrative. You can't say that about all of them. I mean, some of them are actually pretty decent. Yeah, some of them are pretty decent. But those Sean King and Matt Tracy is not out there being political operatives. Tracy was actually good. Tracy was good. I actually like Tracy. Hartman hurt me to my heart. I got to be honest. Hartman hurt me to my heart. Hartman was part of my political awakening. And seeing Hartman in this weird quagmire where he's trying to, walk and chew gum, dealing with these two angles that don't necessarily fit with one another, where he's trying to lead Sanders supporters into the Hillary camp. And then he gets more annoyed the more people kind of hit him on this, saying, yeah, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with this. And there's one conversation after the next where he becomes somewhat of a dick to the callers who are talking to him. He's a Democrat. And I say that to say, think of the pressures that are put on Hartman as a Democrat from his own political identity, from the people and the friends that he have in the Democratic community. And I would imagine that those people have chose their candidate, and that candidate was not Bernie Sanders. So Hartman trying to toe that line probably was not easy for him to toe. Yeah, it hurt seeing Hartman fall into that kind of weirdness. It really did. Hartman chose the dark side. That's funny. And you know what's all about that? One of the brightest people you'd ever come across. One of the brightest. I learned so much odd and interesting shit about history that I didn't know from Thom Hartmann. Like, this is what I mean when I say it hurts me to my heart. Some of these people were clearly part of my political awakening. And either introducing me to stuff where I would research further into it, or making an argument that I hadn't heard before. Like, they were part of my political awakening. And to see these guys get contorted and twisted in this way, oh man, it hurts. It hurts. Ryan Forpress, say anything critical about Democrats and Tom gets triggered, starts yelling circular firing squad. Yes, he does. You heard Elizabeth Warren. I told you, same thing. She was like, well, I don't want to relitigate the primaries, etc., etc., etc. Alistair Merez, I still watch Hartman's show periodically. So do I. Because you learn so much shit from him. Like, if you could somehow scrub the Democratic Party out of Thom Hartmann and just had Thom Hartmann as some kind of teacher, the man is amazing. Like, there's so much interesting and odd shit that Thom Hartmann knows from doing the research back to like pre-Columbian history and everything else. He is a fountain of knowledge. It just so happens that fountain of knowledge gets wrapped into this weird contorted web when he's trying to defend the Democratic Party. And yeah, he's gotten to the point where he flips out. It really is. It's so bizarre. They are still doing that. Mark Benjamin. Mike Saris. I can't watch it. It's hard to watch. I am Silo. Badger, you watch Stand Up Guys. Nice Stand Up Guys, yes. Yes, you need to go over these emotions, Jamal. It's obvious what's going on with TYT and others. Yeah, I feel you, man. Jimmy Dore has a good video on Chris Hayes. I can't remember the topic, but he broke down how Hayes clearly intelligent and was shilling for $30,000 a day. Moral intelligence isn't enough. Yeah, I agree. I like Trey Gowdy for Republican. He should have been Attorney General. You just like Trey Gowdy because you know his ass would have went after Hillary Clinton. That's why you went after Trey. You like Trey Gowdy. And yeah, Trey Gowdy cross-examined Comey in this most beautifully elegant way, where he had Comey essentially saying, she lied about this, she lied about this, she lied about this, she lied about this. And it's like, if she's lying about all these things, how on earth do you let her walk? It's amazing. Adore Pariah. Jamal, who do you think would make a better president, Trump or Cenk? Oh, Jesus Christ. I'm going to have to say Cenk on this, only because Trump is a maniac. And at the very least, I think Cenk would move to the left. That's the only reason. I think he would move to the left. Look, regardless of what you guys think of Cenk, and even though I'm doing a story kind of making this point of the fusion of media and politics and this kind of weird, murky, clusterfuck that TYT is kind of in trying here, I do believe he's further to the left. Like, if you're talking about what a Justice Democrat versus a Democrat, they are further to the left. I mean, it's just flat fact. I don't necessarily think that's a dispute. I'm asking more about the organization itself in regards to what the organization is. It's under attack. Our democracy attack, I say. TYT taught me that. Mark Benjamin, I don't always agree with Zero Books, but yeah, he's great. Anthony Reyes, laughing my ass off. Papa Soros. Trey Gowdy is a nightmare for women, only standing for justice when it's one of his guys, Republicans, Lawrence. And that's kind of the thing that people forget sometimes. These guys are hacks. They're looking out for their own team. They're looking out for their own squad. Fox News would do an article about Obama essentially, giving weapons to terrorists and ISIS. But they would never do that if it was their guy for Donald Trump. In fact, part of the main reason they did the article is so they could say Donald Trump has ended this program that Obama was going through, where he was inefficiently giving weapons and munitions to bloodthirsty terrorists. Yeah, Fox News can do that reporting when that reporting hits the other guy. You think they will ever do that reporting against Trump? Hell no. Hell no. Guard, you're an asshole. That's hilarious. Just imagine Cenk with a chain around his neck made out of $100 bills. His anxiety-ridden delivery as of late will make more sense. It's a chain made of $100 bills. Oh, that's hilarious. Dara Levy. Jamal, do you think the blue wave will fall short? I hope so. Fake progressives and corporatists think they will win in November. I hope not. I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, the polls started to get closer with Republicans. Like, so if at one point there was this kind of distance between Democrats and Republicans, and now the polls seem to have gotten shorter between those things. I don't know. What I would say this, though, if they get that blue wave, and if they get in the House and the Senate, the message that will get across to them is, you can trick the public. You can lose 1,100 seats all throughout the United States. You can lose the House and the Supreme Court. Meaning, all of this is a sharp rebuke. This is literally the public saying, no, we don't like you. We don't like what you're doing. You're not representing our interests. We don't like what you are. No. Hell no. We choose no. Nada. Niet. The reason why I say that is, if they get back in their office, then they've been able to obfuscate in order to get around the fact that the public rejected them outright. Imagine the message that sends. You've essentially have been rejected all throughout the United States and the federal government. And then you obfuscate and dance and talk about Russia to your heart's content. You have the most rapacious bunch of Republicans that you've ever had in this country in office. And the argument that you make is not one of economic populism in the sense of like a Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard. Trump and Russia. And you make that Trump and Russia argument because your billionaire buddies have told you to not talk about economics. If they get a blue wave, imagine the message that they will send to the party. Now, on that, I'm conflicted. I'm uber conflicted. The reason why I'm uber conflicted is because there are two things at work here that I'm not sure which matters more, if that makes sense. If Democrats take it in the blue wave, this is status quo. Is it possible that they will try to have some kind of impeachment hearings up against Donald Trump? I don't know. If they were stupid enough to impeach Bill Clinton, meaning the Republican Party, and they saw what happened, if they're stupid enough to do the same to Trump, it would rip this country apart. That's, mark my words on that part. On the other part, also this message of, you can fail miserably and still get back in office if you can scare the public enough and point to a big enough boogeyman, which is effectively them doubling down on their current strategy or the strategy they've been using. Understand, Democratic strategy for God knows how long, is the very least since Bill Clinton, and longer, LBJ talking about the nuclear bomb being dropped by his opponent. So this has been going on for a while. But Scare the shit out of the public. Scare them. Be the biggest boogeyman that they can find. And when the public didn't bite on this apple last time, they said, double down. Double down. We just didn't scare them enough. So let's say Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia, Trump and Russia. And we are allowed to attack them on this without exposing our flank. Our flank being the fact that we can't talk about economic issues because our billionaires don't allow us to talk about those issues. I don't know if they're going to get a blue wave. I would say if they get a blue wave, that is going to send a horrible message. On the flip side, this is a year for census. And the last time that we had a year for census, Republicans locked in their census gains, meaning the gerrymandered districts were locked in for a decade. That's a fuckfest. Like, regardless of what I think about the overarching thing of politics, I am also aware that that is a fuckfest. Do I really want Republicans to lock in their censor thing again? Now, that being said, from the standpoint of a media outlet, meaning me giving the news, it's a moot point. I just do my news stories. I don't necessarily have to think into what news story helps me or hurts me based on that particular thing, because I don't have to have a dog in the hunt in the way that they go about this. Of course, I'm a lefty, so I have certain things that I want to take place or not take place. But I don't want to get into these moral questions of should I do this story, to advance my interest because I want a blue wave or not want a blue wave, or because I want the census or not want the census. I just do the news. There are going to be certain things that vibe with my values, and I just do the news from that standpoint. I try to stay away from the moral quandaries because I got to be honest. I'm bothered by both. It's like a no-win situation in this. And it becomes, which is the shittier situation? I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. Kay, I'd love to see you debate Sticks. Debate him on what? Trevor R.N. I am Siler. Remember when Cal attacked Debbie for calling? Yes. That's the kind of fake progressive shit I'm talking about. I can name the others next time. Oh, Cal, Siler, you bring back memories, man. Cal, Siler, that was when I first started. And that was the thing I was talking about, where Debbie comes out, and Debbie kind of makes this point like, you guys are essentially taking the worst elements of our current media, meaning this interaction between media and politics, and you're merging those things together, and that's what you're using as this kind of new thing that you're kind of bringing out to the media. Meaning all of these people think this is awesome. And it's like, why do you people think it's awesome? You guys hated this when this was the same strategy that was used against Bernie Sanders, and to choose Hillary and kind of blot out coverage of Bernie Sanders. Are other people running in these races that the Young Turks are supporting? Does it make sense? It's like, are there other people who are running in those races when the Young Turks just plucked a person? And how can we have this honesty, integrity, and the fact of our reporting if they have a dog in the hunt? I showed you the conversation you had with Elizabeth Warren. That was abysmal. And she's not even, being pushed by the Young Turks per se, like these other candidates are. That was Debbie's point. This looks bad. You have a media organization that's supposed to have some level of integrity, and you've thrown it completely out the window to shill for the candidates of your choosing. Cal flips out, does this rant, this epic, like 40-minute rant or something, and in one part, he's like, get the fuck out the way! Get the fuck out the way! Like he's flipping out in this video like he was on something. And you're like, what the fuck is wrong with Cal? Like, look, even if you disagree with what Debbie is saying, he flipped out. He lost his shit. Progressive Voice picked up his cue and runs with it. Hard Bastard does a video where he does all of these new lefties, and he's saying, what the fuck is wrong with Cal? Like, that's essentially was his point. And I thought the same thing. What the fuck is wrong with Cal? You're going to have people who disagree with you, man. You're going to have people who dislike you, who disagree with you, don't necessarily like what you're doing. It's part of the process. Your goal is to either bring them over to your side or at the very least try to minimize the damage. You screaming, get the fuck out the way, has a hallmark of some kind of anger management issue, one, but also was massively unnecessary and over and beyond the pale. It's like, yeah, he was losing his shit. I remember that style, Siler. I remember it. Sometimes Cal and Madhole look like they might be the same person. Ocean Dude. In that video, I said, he attacked Debbie. Debbie's in my sandbox. I didn't like him attacking Debbie. I think I said, expected or suspected lesbian Cal Kalinske, something like that. People was like, why did you call him a suspected lesbian? Yes, Cal Tantrum was hilarious. Yeah, Gardner, it was fucking hilarious. It was awesome. Chris Bolster, Bashar al-Assad, depends if they're feed bar, he'll put it in appearance. Nikki M, do people in the United States who are interested in royal wedding know they're removing homeless people from the area? Nikki, I'm not interested in a royal wedding. You shouldn't even have a royal couple. If Jeremy Corbyn gets into that office, he needs to get rid of the royal family. In what modern day society do you need a king and a queen? And what the hell are you doing with the king and the queen in a modern day society? Are you a country of laws or not? And is the king and the queen in this process above the actual parliament and above the actual law? You guys have had a war over this. You've had a war over this. I think it was like 700 years ago, but still, there was a war between parliament and the king and the royal family and the kingdom. Parliament wins. And despite Parliament winning this war, Parliament still says a country can't be run without a king and a queen. Gotta have a king and a queen, gotta have a royal family. They were appointed by God, right? I always think about that when I think about CEOs and capitalism. The way people think about, well, there always has to be cash in this process. As if it's like this God-created thing. Or there has to be a CEO at the top of this process. Again, as if it's this God-created thing and workers can't run their own affairs. Look, from an outside perspective, I like the royal thing, meaning I like the pomp and circumstance. From a political perspective, it's way beyond time to having this thing that these people are supposedly above other human beings. It's time to call that shit a wrap. Because it's still a constitutional monarchy. Trevor R.M. Yeah. I am. When I was there, I was asking, I was like, what if the Queen comes out and says, some countermand some law or something? What happens? And they were like, oh, Parliament will get rid of that shit in a heartbeat. I was like, then why do you have a king and a queen? Like, if Parliament has a capacity to essentially override something that the king or the queen would do, why do you have the king and a queen? Like, I find this stuff fascinating in the way that Britain has their political system. It's like it's kind of a mishmash. Like, you have the House of Lords that are somewhat appointed people in the process. And you really don't hear much about the House of Lords. But the House of Lords has been shooting down Theresa May's rulings on Brexit. This has been fucking amazing. They gave her 3 losses back to back to back on Brexit and what she wanted to do on Brexit. You usually hear nothing about the House of Lords. House of Lords have started to take a major step in the political apparatus. People have even been saying, hey, do we need to depower the House of Lords? This is fascinating. British politics. Like, American politics is this kind of clean-cut thing. British politics is fudged, to some degree. It's so bizarre. Like, sometimes there are rulings where they're not necessarily... I'll give you an example. D-notices. A D-notice doesn't force a media outlet to not do a story, and yet media outlets follow those notices. It's fudge. Sometimes they follow the notices, sometimes they don't. But it's like... It's fascinating. I love British politics. It's just fascinating. The Tories never left the United States. Who do you think voted for Hillary? Yes! Yes, Bob, yes. Yes. What Bob is getting to there is that for all intents and purposes, the conservative government, the Tories, are the Democratic Party. The Republican Party are so far off the political spectrum that the Republican Party don't even consider the Tories a real right-wing party. Like, I'm trying to give you some context on how batshit crazy they are. That the maniacs have control of the car. It's like, the bus has been handed over to a madman. Chink sells out for $20 million. Everybody losing their mind. But Jamal sells out to Progressive Voice to obtain the best talking points. Nobody bets an eye. Joshua Renshaw. That's fucked up, Josh. I'm going to have to make a t-shirt, man. It's funny. I feel like an asshole because I slightly feel like an asshole about this, and they always bring this up. Look, I'm tribal in some of my stuff. When I hear a military thing, I don't like war. I can't stand what the military does. And yet, I am also one of those people that get a buzz in my head when I hear a rousing military speech. And I'm like, yes, let's go kick some ass. Let's go kick some ass. I'm that guy. And so I do have this thing to some degree of these people are in my sandbox and you defend the people that are in your sandbox. It's just in my head. It's how my brain works. They attacked Caitlin Johnston. And I felt like Caitlin Johnston had been attacked remorselessly over nonsense. They attacked her over nonsense. Those people are insane. They're maniacs. Because a bunch of goblins attacked Caitlin Johnston, the person or one of the people who jumped on board on this was Progressive Voice. And he did it just out of the blue. Like nobody said shit to him. He just comes out the blue and just slaps her and then slightly slaps Jimmy Dore for even having the temerity to have her on. I did a video on this, and I did a video that I slightly regret. I slightly regret it, not because the video wasn't funny, not because the video wasn't right. The video was warranted. The video was right. I have this thing about a group dynamic. I don't like group dynamics in the way that they go after people. This kind of like pit bull nature that people in a group can have sometimes. And I remember I've told this before. One of the worst things that I ever did in my life, I have it in my head. It's seared into my head. And some of those things kind of pop up when I think about me going after and then it's a kid at that. It's like 16 years old. When I was a kid, there was a group of people who were mocking this girl who was there. They were calling her ugly and all this other stuff. And they were ragging on her. And kids are cruel. Kids are assholes. I don't particularly like kids for reasons. And me being young, I went around and was telling somebody else exactly what they said. And as I'm relaying the story, telling them what they said, I see this person's face that's searing into my mind. Well, I don't even know who this person is. I find out like a year or two later that the person who they were talking about was that exact same person who was looking at me, who was listening to each and every word that I said. And I found out that was a person who essentially got hit by that. The look on her face and the utter sadness that tore into her is seared into my brain like nobody's business. I remember her face to this day, and I can't tell you what anybody else looks like in school, like talking about. Yeah, I felt absolute remorse. There's no way to take it back. And there's no way to take it back from, even though I wasn't the person who started it and everything else, I was the person that relayed the information, and it clearly hurt her feelings. That stuff pops up every so often in my head when I do things in order to kind of say, hey, be aware of your actions in regards to how you interact with the world. That being said, like Garnome said, he put his gloves on, he can get hit. He put his gloves on, he can take a hit. I think the Progressive Voice actually has potential. I'm not kidding, but as it stands, he's a TYT parrot, Garnome. Kishwari Kate, propaganda and people who become Canadian citizens must pledge their allegiance to the Queen. Wow. This is kind of what I always get at with the British thing. Who's in charge? Like, I don't know this answer. Who's in charge? Garnome, this Progressive Voice sounds like somebody I should be trolling. Oh, Gard, you done given Tyler a target. That's hilarious. He got knocked the fuck out. Badger David. Lawrence and Garnome, PV will get there. He's just young. Yeah. So this is what I think. I do think he's just young. I think like anybody else, you try to... It's like, think about how you were when you were 16 years old. Like how you were trying to figure out who you are, the things that you like, the things that you dislike, how you're trying to become who you are. You're trying to figure out who you are. I didn't start doing videos until I was 40. You know what I mean? I was somewhat of a shaped person at that point. So whatever I do is essentially stuff I'm dredging up over the course of the last 40 years of my life. And making changes based on the information that's coming in to me and all this other stuff. What do you do when you're that young? I mean, by the same token, it also kind of asks this question of who's listening to him, to a 16-year-old. But whatever. I don't necessarily doubt that he has potential. I guess my issue with this is I shouldn't have hit him. Or at the very least, I shouldn't have hit him as hard. You didn't rip into that kid. You spared a bit. There's no reason to feel bad. Oh, thank you, Garnome. I appreciate it. Daryl Alevi, the Queen is one of the world's wealthiest landowners, and they give her money. Your government gives her money each year, and that amount of money seems to increase yearly or something. The next turn, Jamal, still hoping you will start a progressive YouTube video. You can have ideas on this if you want to hear them. Skip Rock, Progressive Voice is 16. I thought he was 16, yeah. Lenny Glenn, 45 for me. Hot damn, Lori. Do your thing. Propaganda. The Queen appoints a minister to sign all Canadian bills at the final form. I did not know that. Jamal, did you message George Galloway to have him on your show? I did message George Galloway. George Galloway did not answer. I think you guys have an overinflated view on my power to get people on the show. I would love to have Galloway on the show. I would love that. Galloway was going after the labor. I've seen him go after so many people, and it's fucking hilarious. He had this video where he's, yes, Lori Lomi. Right. There's a video that he did where he was having a debate with this woman on Israel and Palestine. He ate her for lunch. Oh, she looked bad. She looked so bad. Luca Clemente, does anybody excluding the 4 million gullible fools take TYT seriously anymore? Do we even need to talk about them anymore? Luca, I would say that 3 million fools. Look, man, is that really a weapon you want to give up? Honestly, let's be real for a moment. Let's be honest. With all their flaws, with all their fuck-ups, with all of the stuff that they've been pushing this Russiagate nonsense, them trying to get people to vote for Hillary Clinton, they have 4 million people at their disposal, meaning that number of people. That is a network. I just wish the network was better. That's all. I wish their network was something like Real News Network. If you want to have an opinion show, don't let it be the main show. That's all. Like, you have this kind of thing that seems to be a political operation and a media operation, and it's hard to know which is which. I mean, at one point, like, I was getting stuff that was from Justice Democrats, and then I get something from TYT, and it was the same thing. It was like the same letterhead. So I feel you, Luca, but there are a lot of people out there who are feeling, who I don't necessarily think see the skew that's taking place. Like this, the change. I don't think they see the change. I love Real News. I love Real News too. Cara Moth. As a Canadian, I prefer actual monarch over weird worship of U.S. presidents, to be honest. Cara Moth. All right. Would you like to call in and have that conversation? Cara Moth. Cara Moth, if you want to call in to have that debate, I'll have that debate with you any day of the week and twice on Sundays. Any day of the week and twice on Sundays. Mr. Miles, hey Salar, I listened to your appearance on the show. You and I share similar views of Cali. Yeah, I do. To some degree, I do too. Jamal just dislikes TYT because there's Star Wars and he's Star Trek. There's Star Wars? Oh man, that even makes it even more worse. That makes it much more worse. Much worse. Jamal is not a weapon in our arsenal. Jamal, we give it up. It was bought. Oh man, you're talking about the $20 million. You know, it's funny. I've asked this question before, and I don't ask this question to be unfair. I ask this question because I think it's an earnest question. How do you make the case that money in politics is a problem? That these people are getting all of this money, and when they get this money, that money has, like you said, a leash of $100 bills around their throat, or collar of $100 bills. How do you make the argument that one is a leash but the other is not? And I think, Garden, that's what you're getting at. And I think that's what a lot of people try to get at when you talk about the $20 million. It's like, you guys have been such advocates for this money thing. How do you just change on a dime like that? Canada has a complicated relationship with the Royals. That's true. Yeah, you guys were is it Dominion? I think it's called a Dominion. God save the Queen's finances. Robert Bouquet. God save the Queen's finances. It's just the appearance of corruption. That's all it is. Have the Queen on, JT. Bashar al-Assad. I would love to have the Queen on the show. I have a lot of questions to ask her. They'd be pissed off, though. People would be pissed. They're trying to blow up my car. Yeah, Real News is good. Yeah, I like Real News. RT. I like RT too. Yeah, Dominion or Colony. That's what it is, right? Dominion. A Commonwealth. God, is that what it's called? Commonwealth. Yes, we are Dominion of Canada. Okay, that's what it is. I've been reading up on... There's this documentary that goes from British history going from, like, when to start all the way up to recent. It is fascinating. And then you start getting into the minor details about how Britain fell as a world power, the world wars. All that stuff is fascinating. British history is fascinating. I think it's required reading, to be honest, to look at some of the ways that the British Empire fell and look at the trend that America is taking. It's fascinating. It really is. It really, really is. You dislike president worship and want to replace it with an even more narrow political system that would create a more narrow field of worship. It's just backwards. Oh, you're talking about the Queen stuff. Prince Philip was raised by the Nazis. Please cover it, Jamal, in a video. Daryl Levy. I didn't know Prince Philip was raised by Nazis. What the hell? I'll look that up. That sounds a little extreme, but I'll look it up. Local commentator. It's just sad to me that so many people still think TYT has any value. A brief sampling of independent YouTube channels will quickly reveal how worthless TYT is. Yeah, worthless is strong. You guys disagree with me that TYT is a weapon. I think it's a weapon that's being used for the other side at this point, if I'm being honest. Meaning the MSNBC light stuff. I do think they're MSNBC light. I think just like the FDR thing to save capitalism, I think ultimately they just want to save capitalism. Meaning there's only but so far that they're willing to go within regards to the system itself. I suspect that if they got their way within 20 years, you need a new deal, because as far as they want to go, it's just, the Russiagate stuff is atrocious. I'm sorry, the Russiagate stuff is atrocious. And this idea of them pushing us closer and closer to war, with Cenk Uygur having to stop to tell people that he's deeply progressive, should get across that there are problems with the way that network is functioning. It really should. Reef Breland. I think the Monarch now serves as a diplomacy venue service. Think of how much we spend on White House galas and hosting foreign dignitaries. No, I feel you. I don't... You misunderstand me. I have this sick fascination with Britain. I don't know what it is. I really do. I have this kinship or this feeling towards it. Meaning I like the country. I don't necessarily know where it comes from. It just is what it is. I don't necessarily need to know where it comes from to indulge or be learning about the place. I am dual mind on this, if that makes sense. I'm of dual mind of a lot of stuff. There are a lot of stuff where I feel two ways about. This is one of those things. And let me explain why. In one case, I have this interesting feeling of Brits having this kind of interesting way of going about their affairs. And I know it's interesting only to me because I'm not a Brit. And for the most part, I'm seeing it from an outside perspective. And so from my perspective, it's different and it's odd and it's interesting. But there is a quirky, interesting... It's odd, man. I love it. It's something about... It's a swagger that's associated with it that I like. The royal family and this kind of king and queen thing has this feeling of luxury and everything else about it. So I understand the pomp and circumstances of it. I get it. It's you can make the argument that from a national reputation and the cultural heritage and all that stuff, you can make all those arguments. But at the end of the day, though, this other part of me, this bitterly intellectual part of me, looks at this and says, why are they above anybody else? Is the royal crown above the commons? Yes or no? And if the queen doesn't have the capacity to pass a law, or if the queen doesn't have the capacity to essentially make some kind of edict that parliament can't necessarily get rid of, then why do you have a royal family? Like, it seems that they become perfunctory at that point. What is their point? I mean, even if the point is ceremonial, fair enough, but it's just weird, that's all. And I don't mean weird from the standpoint of, being American descendant. Are they above the normal person or not? I guess that's my grief. It's this thing of feeling like royal. I don't like that term. I don't like that word. That word to me feels like this person is somehow, by God, better than other people. And that's nonsense. The very fact that they call this person a queen or a king in and of itself is nonsense. I find all those things to be nonsense. It's not meritorious. The person was born into it. And somehow we are to believe that just because this person was appointed by God for a particular role, I find it to be nonsense. That's my issue with the whole crown and royal family stuff. Maybe if I lived in Britain, I would have a different disposition for it, a different opinion on it. And that being said, that's just my opinion on it. It has no value at all. It's just what I think about the philosophical standpoint of a royal family. As for presidential worship, they've attacked Donald Trump like nobody's business. The president's name has been dragged in the mud like to an obscene degree. All objectivity has been lost in the media from the United States. They have attacked him relentlessly. Whatever pomp and circumstance that was there at this point, you have maniacs that have taken the helm. And you have a certain demographic of the population that still looks at Donald Trump as a president, and they give him accolades and everything else. But you have another part of the population that hates his guts, and they don't treat him like a president at all. In fact, they treat him like he's an interloper that's in that office, that he shouldn't be in that office at all, which is nonsense because nobody owns that office. Donald Trump won it. He beat your guy fair and square. Now, you can say, well, they've been messing around with the thing, but fact is, I don't want to hear shit from Democrats about rigging or election hacking or any of that stuff, seeing as what they did during the primaries. Bad faith is an understatement. Bad faith is an understatement. Reef Breland, I love the UK. Most of my entertainment comes from there. How do you feel about state-funded TV like BBC? And one stuff for me makes me better content because it's paid for by the people. Yes, I agree. I like state media. Now, the reason why I say I like state media, I know this sounds weird, is because I know that it's state media. When RT comes out with a story, I know it's RT. I know they have a bias built into it. This is the state's perspective of events. It's none of the subjectivity shit. None of the media saying, well, we're objective, we're not connected to anything at all. When you know MSNBC is part of the Democratic Party, you know Fox News is part of the Republican Party. I like the idea that state media is state media. It's clear, unequivocal. CNN plays that role of state media, but CNN doesn't like to call themselves state media. They're stenographers. The fact is, if you're a stenographer, you are effectively state media. But they don't call it that, which makes it a little bit more disastrous. I like the idea of state media. I like the BBC. BBC has their problems, don't get me wrong. When they were talking about the Jeremy Corbyn thing and they were undercutting the amount of seats that Tories lost, that's a problem. It seems like they have a certain bias against Jeremy Corbyn. When they're showing this kind of thing, I can put him in a red hat, like changing his hat, putting a red background and all this other stuff. It's like, what the hell are you guys doing? It seems like they have a clear, distinct bias in their ways. But, that being said, at the very least, I know that it's the BBC. I know it's a British Broadcasting Network, meaning I know they have a bias. I know it. That doesn't bother me as much as opposed to some of the other media networks. And look, many things have this. China has theirs. RT has theirs. BBC has theirs. Other people have it. Jesus Christ. Oh, BBC equals CNN. I called it. That's what I mean. Like the state media thing. CNN essentially takes that role. Do you remember when Tulsi Gabbard was talking to Jake Tapper? She tells them they're terrorists, we're army terrorists, and Jake Tapper says, the government says it's not true. Why are you telling me what the government, why are you informing me, Jake, that the government is saying something that's not true? I've just given you a bombshell. Why aren't you asking me questions about this bombshell as opposed to just relaying the government line? Yeah, I agree, Daryl Levy. CNN is essentially BBC. At least they're very similar. Let's put it that way. Now, this is the best content Jamal has provided all day. Silence, Joe Teresa. Oh, okay, we have jokes. Cardmouth. Without CBC, Canadian TV might be a little too corporate in my view. I support public TV. Agreed. Lorm, state-funded media, okay. Forcing the populace to pay a television tax, ridiculous. We have a television tax? I didn't know that. Door Pariah, where preferably you have both state, commercial, and independent media operating together, and we do, in ways, got to be grateful for that. Yeah, I'm not against that. That's what I mean. I'm not against the whole state media thing, because it's coming from the state media. The state has a perspective. We get that from CNN. The problem is CNN acts as if they're objective, as they are stenographers. BBC has its flaws, but I think it's better off with than without it. Agreed. Carmouth, I agree. I like it. Awesome show, Jamal. Thanks. Happy Friday. Wesley Walker. Holy shit, man. Thank you, Wesley. Thank you, Wesley. Yeah. Thank you, Wesley. Daryl Levy. Skirples who are Skirple. Pablo Miller. Pablo Miller was the person that they put a D notice on in British media in order to shut up the media with talking about Pablo Miller's connection with Christopher Steele. This is such a fuckfest. It's so weird. So Christopher Steele and Pablo Miller worked together. Now we know that there was supposedly they got this from some kind of Russian source. Is it possible that the Russian source they got this from was Skripal? And is it possible that they drugged this guy not with some kind of, the V toxin or whatever the stuff they're talking about they use, but with some other toxin that the Russian government came on and said, look, it's this toxin, it's not the other one. The other one is supposed to be more toxic, like 5 times or 50 times more toxic than like VX. And yet this guy is recovered and this guy's out walking around and the niece is recovered. I think the only person that died was a hamster or a cat, something to that effect. This story makes no sense. The British government comes out and says all of these areas are contaminated. Then they come out and says, okay, all these areas are perfectly okay now. Its story makes no sense. Murray, one of the journalists, comes out and says, look, the reason why the story doesn't make sense is because they put a denotice because they didn't want people to talk about Pablo Miller being the connection to Christopher Steele. Because for that, they didn't want people digging into this thing that Pablo Miller was the handler of Skripal, and that the story that Christopher Steele got was potentially from the Russian that's there. And that, it's like, why would they put a knife in the guy? Is it possible they put the knife in the guy because the guy was going to talk? One of the things that kept coming up when the Republican Party was asking for more files on the FBI, they said this can create an international issue. What is the international issue that this can create? I'm curious. Skripal's released from the hospital today. Really? They're released from the hospital. So the guy gets hit with this massive dose of poison, enough that's supposed to kill a multiple number of people, like a town of people or something like that. And he's just ticking along. And nobody has any consequence for Boris Johnson coming out screaming Russia did it, and Portendale told me that Russia did it. No consequence. No consequence. This is from the country that worked with the United States to invade Iraq on the pretext of a lie. But there's no consequence for this level of lying at the top level of government. All of this is problematic, and all of this looks extraordinarily dubious and stinks. And yeah, it's potentially that we are more connected than we think we are, meaning this Trump-Russia investigation and the Skripal case. What I thought was weird was that all of this stuff was pointed to Russia. And I thought either all of these guys are working together in some kind of weird coordination where Russia is being the focal point. Either they're working as singular actors who are just bringing up Russia, or Russia has something to do with it. Being somewhat cynical, because the Russia-Trump stuff was made out of whole cloth, I have to look at the British case and I have to start thinking to myself, are they being serious? And fact is, the reason why I don't think they're being serious is because they didn't care about the evidence. They jumped from something happened to we're blaming Russia and off to the races. They didn't care about the evidence because the evidence didn't matter. They just wanted to be able to blame Russia for it. This stuff, this is a fuck fest. This is amazing. I'm glad I picked JT over TYT this time. I appreciate and agree with his clarified position for the most part. Thank you. I appreciate it. Jamal, check out the Canadian philosopher John Rawson Saul. He came up with the term corporate coup. He has really good books. That's the guy that what is his name? Christopher Hedges. That cat. If I'm not mistaken, that's the one Chris Hedges really liked. Chris Hedges even interviewed him, talking about this inverted totalitarianism. Chris Hedges talks about it every time he gets in front of a microphone. Yeah, I've checked out some of his stuff. At least I've heard the interview. Chris Hedges, like a 3-hour interview with the guy. Yeah, because Russia is not as controlled by the banks. No, there is not. Not as controlled by the banks. What if PV had just laundered his Russian money through Jamal? What if Progressive Bush has laundered his Russian money through Jamal? Watch Rick Man Trick next turn. Jamal, watch Rich Man's Trick. I've seen that video. Dara Levy. Plus, Jamal, if you look up Lord Mountbatten, cousin of the Queen, he plotted a coup against the Labour Prime Minister Harold Wilson in the 1970s. Jesus Christ, are you serious? You know, there was almost a coup in the United States also. There was a bunch of plutocrats that didn't like what FDR was doing, and they tried to find a way to take him out that seat. Smedley Butler, the one that wrote Wars of Racket, ended up being the person to blow the whistle on this coup in order to protect the representative government. Amazing. Jamal, would you join TYT if they invited you? You mean to be a commentator? No. I like my independence. If it was one of those things, because it's like, I gotta be honest. I would imagine that Jimmy Dore is banging his head on the wall sometimes. I would imagine he loves the platform, but he hates the fact that he becomes this kind of weird, he has to put himself through contortions in order to attack Democrats, but somehow spare TYT in those attacks. And sometimes you find him not sparing TYT, having a whole hog at TYT when he's frustrated or annoyed or pissed off. No, I like my independence. Even if it takes me forever to get to like 100,000, then it takes me forever to get to 100,000. I would prefer to do it with my own independence. There's a YouTube channel named 31 Mike that has 2016 presidential election coverage from just about any news outlet worldwide. None of them were pro-Trump, not even the conservative media. Skip Rock, are you serious? It was that bad? Wow. And he still won. That's amazing. Harlan Sinclair, I guess I know Jamal. What do you mean, the TYT? Oh, fuck no. Not like my independence. Every month I support Jamal through Patreon. I get thank you letter from Progressive Voice. No, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Would you talk with Rogue Money's YouTube channel? I know who Rogue Money is. Oh, that's a channel. Rogue Money. It's funny. Sometimes I don't know the channels because I don't get the chance to look at this stuff because it's funny. It's like, as you start doing this more, it feels like you're working all the time. And so the content that you're inhaling, the stuff that you're reading is stuff that you're trying to monetize. Like you turn it into a show. You're like, what would be interesting for my audience? What would be interesting for me? And where does those two things dovetail in a way that I can do a decent show that my audience may like and they may find interesting? So I don't get the chance to look at all these shows without the context of this kind of content. Like I think it was like a day or so ago, I watched hours of World War I stuff. There's this channel. Oh man, it's an awesome channel that goes week by week by week of World War I from the day that it started to the day that it ended. It takes place over 4 years, and I've been binge watching that show. That show is amazing. But I guess my point is, I find myself inhaling information because I need to be able to relay that information here, and I need to have a contextual point of view on that information. So I don't really get the chance to watch other shows in as much as other content of specific information, if that makes sense. Hope that makes sense. What's the channel, Jamal? It's called The Great War. It's amazing. It's literally week by week by week. Like from the moment that the war starts, and it would go from 1 week to the next, dealing with the major maneuvers, things that are happening on both fronts, what's going on in the back end. Oh man, it's amazing. It's so fucking good. Progressive Voice looks like Jinx Love Child. Tune at 20. Oh, that's a dick move. Why are y'all ragging on this kid? You're killing me. Why are y'all ragging on this kid? That's hilarious. All right, guys. We've been going. Oh, fuck. It's almost 2 hours. All right. We've been going for like 2 hours. I'm going to end it here. Look, guys, I appreciate you guys showing it with me and having the show. What I may end up doing is cutting out the portion up until maybe like 30 minutes. Only because I'm trying to do better and making these more marketable in regards to having more people to watch them. And so I'm starting to cut out like snippets in the same way that I've seen other channels do. I'm going to leave the entirety of the video here while at the same time pulling out certain snippets of the video itself. But I still may cut out the first part of it. Thank you guys for showing up, man. I really do appreciate it. Actually, fuck it. I'm going to leave the entirety of the video. People can watch it or not. I still may take out a snippet, but for the most part, I'm going to leave the entirety of the video. Guys, thank you all for showing up. And everybody that's helped the show, I appreciate it. Reith Breland, I Am Siler, Joshua Renshaw, Trevor R.N., Jeremy Chase, Rob Illinois, Justin B. Greens are paying a price from the biased coverage. I missed this one, Justin. I'm sorry. Greens are paying a price from the biased coverage. Of course they're going to pay a price. I mean, they're in the tank for Democrats, so, they're not going to push Greens. Accepting $20 million doesn't make you accountable to progressives. No, it does not. It does the opposite. Sorry for defending her policies as if she had them. Yeah, I read that one. Anna turned from I could never forgive myself for voting for Hillary Clinton to defending her policies 6 months in a top political betrayal scandal. Yes. I don't know if you guys remember this. God damn it, I said I was going to end it. Baltazar, fuck, man. If you remember this, I distinctly remember this. Anna was like, I can't vote for Hillary Clinton. I can't do it. Look at the old footage. I can't do it. I can't vote for her. I can't vote for this woman. No, I can't do it. And then she went to a Trump rally, and she comes back, and she's like, I'm terrified. Now, to be fair to Anna, Jimmy Dore went to that rally and came back and said, I'm terrified. Like even he said it was a hate rally, and I had doubts. Somewhere along the way, Anna changed from I could never vote for Trump or I could never vote for Hillary to explaining why Hillary was a better candidate and getting annoyed at people who were saying she wasn't. Yeah, Balthazar, you're right. It's amazing political transformation over the course of 6-7 months. It really is. It shocked the shit out of me when I saw it. It shocked the shit out of me. Let's see. Balthazar, Wesley, and Justin. Guys, I know I say this all the time, but look, thank you for your help. You guys help make the show what it is. The conversation, because we had a ton of people. We had almost 200 people here, which for me is really good. And also, the conversation without people fighting. And that's a big deal to me. When I do this channel, I try to do this channel in a way that people can talk and they can make their arguments. Don't be racist, don't be sexist, etc., etc. But talk, make your case. Even if you're somewhat on the line. I don't tend to, censor anything else from the standpoint of somebody being on the line, because I don't necessarily like this thing of people trying to shush or shut people up. But I like the fact that all of these people can hear. Some of these people are Trump supporters, some of these people are not. Some of these people push to the left, some of these people a little bit more in the center. And yet, you guys talk and you interact. You're not being bitchy at one another. You're having conversations. I love that so much. A part of me wants to feel like it's because I guess I give the space for it. But I think it's like you put out a certain wave and people jump on that particular wave of thought. And for whatever reason, this particular space, I think, is a decent space where you guys talk and interact. And I love it. You guys help make the show. Thank all of you for your support. Wesley, you're too kind. You're way too kind. Baltazar, all of you guys. I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. I'm going to end this here. There was a show on Democrats that I wanted to do that I'm probably not going to be able to get to because it's kind of late. But once again, guys, thank you all very much for showing up. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night, guys.